Welcome back to the Glow Up Girl podcast. I'm Kyra. All right, and let's welcome Staacy to the show. Welcome, Staacy.
Thank you, Kyra. It's so great to be here.
Yes. Well, I'm really excited to have you on today. You're going to be talking about a topic and how you help women, something that's very near and dear to my heart as someone who feels like an overachiever or a high achiever. And so definitely looking forward to hearing your tips and how you can help all women to find that balance and avoid burnout, basically. So why don't we get started by having you tell the audience listening or watching who you are and what you do?
So, I am a recovering startup addict, and I now help high achieving women rest, reset, and find joy, and find different ways that activate joy within them.
Yes. Oh, I love that because it's so important to find joy. Okay, so let's talk about what inspired you to focus on helping high achieving women.
Experienced burnout myself. I grew up in South Louisiana,
Hmm.
and I didn't quite fit in. Growing up there, I didn't quite fit in the sense of like everybody was trying to like you have to be polite and accommodating,
Hmm.
and not that I'm not polite.
Right, right.
Right? I was being told to do things that didn't feel right to me, and it was trying to be, as I think of it now, I didn't think of it this way then, but as I think of it now, as like pushed into a cage and shaped into this person that didn't feel like me. And I've come a long way from living in the swamps, and I found myself I was in my 20s, I had a child out of wedlock, and I started finding myself in that mold, living in that
Hmm.
cage and, like, doing the right thing because I had shame around having a child out of wedlock, and I ended up marrying my high school sweetheart so I could build a stable life for my child, and that kinda turned into just not it was just turned into a mess, and we ended up going through a tumultuous custody battle and divorce, and it was super painful. And so what I did to kind of mask, and at first it wasn't masking. At first it was thinking I was compartmentalizing and dealing with the pain, but I dove into work and I dove into startups. And that the thrilling aspect of startups for me kind of filled that gap and filled that space in my heart that was broken from the custody situation. And then I became kind of, like I said, I'm a recovering addict from startups. I became addicted to the fast-paced nature of startups, and it
Mhm.
was really exciting for me, and it kind of numbed that space in my heart. So I started building kind of startup after startup, and it was anything from the tech industry to furniture to I was running an airline at one point, and I didn't really stop. I just kept going. I just kept adding things to my plate.
Mhm.
Actually, when I was running the airline, I was still building a technology startup. Who has time to do one startup? Much
Right.
less running too, right? And, like, I'm responsible for people's lives that are in the air, just the whole thing. It was, like, just adding more stress and more stress and more stress. So, I burned myself out to the, like, end. My body felt completely depleted. I thought I had some terrible disease. I was going to doctors and they were like, "No, you're just stressed out." And I was like, "No, no, no, no. This is something terrible." Not
Right.
thinking like stress
Yeah.
is terrible.
Yeah. And it
And
can't be because I'm doing all these things.
right, right.
Right.
I'm getting all
Yeah.
the praise for doing all the things, so I must be doing
Yeah.
the right things. Yeah, it was counterintuitive and it wasn't serving me. And
Mhm.
I went away to a trip. I took a trip to Hawaii, to the big island of Hawaii, and I worked with a Hawaiian healer there. And she finally looked me in my eyes and was like, "This is stress." I was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. Everyone's told me that, but I don't think it is." She was like, "There is this stress is a disease." And the way she broke it down to me, really, I got it, right? And
Mhm.
so I started, and she wouldn't let me kind of get away with the justifications and all the other things. And there's something magical about Hawaii. It sounds like you've been. It just being there kind of allows our body to sink in to
Yes.
just to
Yeah.
relaxation. And so
Mhm.
because my body was sinking into relaxation, it was easier to start really incorporating the things that she was suggesting that I do. And by the end of that trip, I didn't want to go back to work. I was like, "No, like, I kinda feel good, and that feels really good to kinda feel
Right.
good."
Yeah, yeah.
And I saw the potential to feel better, and then I did end up going back to work, and that was at the end of 2019, and
Mhm.
then at beginning of 2020, I was in a toxic work environment, and I was like, "I can't do this anymore." Like, I tasted what good felt like.
Right. Yes.
You know? And I was like, at the time, wasn't fully feeling like I was deserving of good and worthy of good, but I was
Mhm.
like, I want to feel that feeling again. And
Right.
I ended up leaving that job right before the pandemic. And then the pandemic happened.
Mhm.
And I hate even saying this because it was such a tragedy for there's so much tragedy in that. But for me, it opened up a whole world. And I think it was finally because I was listening to myself. I was
Mhm.
listening to my intuition and I was doing the things that I really felt like I needed to do for myself. And
Mhm.
I feel like the universe started giving me all of these wonderful things so that I could continue giving to myself. And
Yeah.
to kind of round this off, I the inspiration came from burnout myself. And over
Mhm.
the next 4 years, I tried out a bunch of different things to help myself come out of burnout because it's not I don't know if you know this, but when our bodies are in fight or flight and
Mhm.
we're overrun with cortisol, it's really hard to get rid of that cortisol.
Mhm.
So even though I was feeling a lot better, I still was like my body was still in fight or flight. I still needed
Mhm.
to like get rid of the cortisol. So I was pulling in these different things and basically gave myself a retreat. I wouldn't say
Yeah.
a mini I just like this long retreat over 4 years and I took those practices that really worked for me and I put
Mhm.
them into building a retreat for other women who are burnt out.
Oh, yeah, I love that. You said so many key things. I wanted to like just even go back to where you talked about being your upbringing and being another southerner here. Like I definitely understood when you were saying that. I definitely understood because it is like just like a unwritten rule that people from the south have to be this polite, don't speak out of turn. If you have opinions, keep them to yourself, that type of thing. And so I definitely felt that. And I think people don't realize like that's a lot of pressure, especially if your personality is screaming to do something different and to be different. And you don't
Yep.
want to fit in the box that they're trying to put you in. And that's what it's so funny because like I always knew like I'm from like the most kinda like the southern part of Georgia, and I just
Okay.
kept saying, I was like, "There's no way I could live here for the rest of my life because, like, this is just not me." Like, I want to be expressive, I want to say things, and it's like you said, it's not being rude or anything, it's just like I have an opinion, and I'm not okay just being smiling and just being like, "Okay, yeah, sure, I'll go along with that." So I think and there's so many people that are going through that, and then they're going through that on jobs where you're in corporate environments and it's like people are having to almost like turn off who they are in order to just fit into jobs every day, right? And so I think so much of what you have just experienced, so many women, so many people who listen to this show are experiencing that same thing. And when you talked about, like, going to Hawaii, and I'm pretty sure for anyone else who may have a special place that they vacation, you're right. Because even when I went there, I was like, "Wow, like, these people are just nice, like, they aren't arguing with each other, people are just living in harmony." It's like
Mm.
there's, like, no stress, or it appears to be, like for me, like, I just felt like, "Wow, this was a week well spent," like, a little over a week,
Mhm.
but when it was time to go back, I was like I too was like, "Oh gosh, I don't wanna go back. I don't wanna go back to work because as soon as I get back, it's just gonna be like, they're all on top," like, the same difference, but I love that you were able to, like, step away and create that joy, that feeling again for yourself, and now you're offering that to other women.
Thank you. You know, Hawaii has something really special about it. It has a very feminine nature, right? And
Mhm.
I don't know if you experience this or if other women are experience this. I think I see it, right, in the corporate
Mhm.
world and in the startup world. I really embodied my masculine when I was working because
Oh. Mhm.
that's where I got so much approval. It was like, if
Mhm.
you're doing, if you're organized, if you're compartmentalizing, then you're going to be rewarded because that world is such a masculine world.
Yeah.
And when I got to Hawaii and started like feeling the feminine nature of Hawaii, I started stepping into more of my feminine
Mhm.
nature.
Mhm.
And it just was such a beautiful unfolding for me. It was like, whoa, I started to
Yeah.
see how masculine my tendencies had become. And
Yeah.
so a lot of my retreats are focused on like really embracing and stepping into our feminine
Mhm.
again as women.
Yeah, I love that because you're right. I mean, and I definitely think like probably 85% of cultures in the corporate place feel that way, right? So if you're lucky enough where you don't have a place that makes you feel like you have to lean into that masculine energy all the time, because I'm thinking back like to all the corporate jobs I had, and they all were that way. Like you had to be aggressive. You had to be always in a meeting, like standing up for yourself because someone wouldn't let you just go ahead and like finish what you were going to say. You always had to
Exactly.
be on high alert to be like, if you could just let me finish like that. I felt like that was on repeat at like my old job where I'm like, okay, like we both can't talk at the same time.
No, yeah.
Yeah. Can you just let me finish?
Exactly, and that overachieving nature would come in, right? Of like, "I need to be better than this person. I need to do better
Every
than this
time.
person. I'm
Yes.
gonna take on more work than I need to take on right now because I need to be
Yes.
better than this person." That like
I'm going to work late. I'm going to be on early. I'm going to be on late. I'm going to be
Yep.
on at night. I'm going to be on around the clock basically. And for for what, right? Yeah.
Right.
So like, you're doing all that and you're just like burning, stressing yourself out because and I think it sneaks up on a lot of people. Like
Totally.
yeah, like they just don't know. I mean, they like then one day they just crash out and they can't come back.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
or it's like where people are like, "Oh, I just had to take off. Like, I need to take off. I've gotta take off." Like, I see like, when you can see it happening to someone
yeah.
and, like, I hear someone I'm like, "Well, why don't you just, like, take a few days off?" And I'm like, when you take those days off, like, maybe just take those days off and just do something for yourself. And it's like,
Yeah,
"Oh, well, if I do this" and then I just told one of my friends, I said, "Look, here's what I do sometimes." Is I will take days off and I don't tell my husband I'm taking them off. I just take the days off. I said sometimes I get up just as like I'm regularly getting up, get up, I work out, take a shower, come downstairs. I maybe work like on glow up girl business because that doesn't stress me out. So I'm working in the purpose. And I said, and like he doesn't know because if he knew, then his schedule would change. And it would be, oh, I'm gonna take off with you. And oh, then we need to go do this. And then I never get like the rest that I was trying to get. She was like, "Oh, I never thought about that." And I was like, "Yes, girl." I was like, "That's
yeah.
looking out for yourself."
Right? Well, Kyra, I love that you are able to tap into that, right? My mom told me, she was like, "Stacey, you need to take some time off for yourself. You need to go and like have fun."
No.
And I feel so silly saying this right now, but at the time I was like, "How do you do that?" I don't know what's fun, you know?
Right.
She was like, "Oh my goodness,
Uh,
wow."
and and we all because there might be people listening saying like, "Oh, I hear you," and you're talking about taking like we all have to get there because there was a time in my life where I mean, and I still am not the best at it right now. I mean, there are times where I'm like, "Oh, wow, I didn't plan." People on my team. There's a girl on my team that works on my team. Bless her heart, and I admire it because she's planned out her whole year and all her vacation time is in the books and it's like all booked up and I'm like, how do you do it? Like, how did you know in January like all the things? And she's like, oh, I don't know, like I just sat down in December and planned it out. And I was like, oh my god, I can't even think to like the next week. Nevertheless, like months from down from here. But I think like so it is like hard because I know I used to always be I would have all the vacation time I'm one of those people, you get to the end, they're like, well, you can only roll over 10 days. And then I'm like, vacation. But it's finding just even the little things. And even if for me, it's just like I mentioned to you, like I had a birthday and yesterday, even though it was a weekday birthday, I said, you know what? Yeah, take off like a half day. I'm just going to like just chill, whatever. And I had planned to like, I was gonna go to the library because I like going to the library, but it was raining here and it was really ugly out. And I was like, oh, I don't want to go out in that. So, but I enjoy, as people have heard me talk about here, I love doing puzzles. I was
Oh,
working
that's
on a
awesome.
puzzle and I just went in there and I sat down and I started doing a puzzle. I did first I watched a movie with my husband and pup. So we watched the movie. I went in and sat down and I did worked on my puzzle for like an hour. And then we ordered Chipotle. I was like, Chipotle for birthday dinner. And it was just easy. And I actually went to bed early. And I don't go to bed early, like, at all.
Oh,
I
I
s
love that.
I'm up late, like, I stay up until at least, like, 1 o'clock every night, almost.
Oh, how do
And
you
I
do that?
I don't know, and I get up at 5:30. I don't know how, but it's been my routine for like, pretty much my entire life. I've never gone to bed early.
Wow.
Like, that's, outside of the time when your parents make you go to bed.
Yeah,
But since I've been able to control my own bedtime, I've always stayed up really late and gotten up early. And so, yeah, so last night, I think I was asleep by 10 o'clock. And
really.
I was like, is this what it feels like to be well rested?
Oh, yes. I get in bed at 8:30 and
Oh,
the latest I'm
hmm
probably asleep by now is 9:30, but it took me like some figuring out. When I was doing startup world and I was overrun by cortisol, I was maybe sleeping 4 hours a night. And now I go to sleep at like I'll fall asleep by like 9:30 and I'm up at 5. I feel like $1,000,000 because I've rested.
I need to
Sleeping
get some of that. It
yeah,
is. It it
it's
it it really is. And I know I keep telling myself I need to go to bed. I need to go to bed.
yeah,
But it's like the nighttime gets live and things start happening. I'm like, what? What are we doing? What are we watching?
you're a night owl. Yeah.
So crazy. And because like, yeah, it's like I'm a night owl and I'm a morning person because I can easily I love functioning in the morning when other people are sleeping.
Sleeping.
Again,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, "Oh, I can get so much done. Nobody's up but me."
Yeah.
So, you now, so
Yeah.
we've talked about a couple of things, but what are some of the challenges that you see? Because we were talking about some of those, but clients that come to you, like, what are some of those challenges that they are facing?
So I'm typically working with women who are experiencing exhaustion and burnout. Some of that might be some, hormonal imbalances. It was for me. I went into perimenopause or started having perimenopausal symptoms pretty early. I'm going to be 49 in March and that I started experiencing like 36, 37, and
Mhm,
so we work on that, disconnection from self and from
mhm,
joy, like lack of community, no real deep friendships with women, and limited time for self-care. Those are the challenges I see the most with women coming into to Laia.
mhm. And why is it so hard? Because some of the things that you mentioned, I mean, why is it so hard for high achievers to practice self-care?
Oh gosh. I think part of it is, well, what we talked about earlier, people pleasing and perfectionism, right? I think overachievers tend to be people pleasers. There's a time scarcity mindset, guilt and shame around rest, right? That's a
Mhm.
big one. They don't realize that they're burnt out.
Yeah.
Burnout feels normal. Stress, hustling, that all
Yeah.
feels normal. And
Mhm.
so they don't, like, just like you said earlier, they don't realize it until it's kind of too, not necessarily, it's never too late, right? I'm not going to
Right.
say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's, like me, when I went to Hawaii and I got that rest, I came back and was like, "I don't want to go back to work."
Yeah.
But we wanna do this, we wanna solve these things so that we wanna go back and enjoy work again, right?
Yeah, yes. And you touched on so many things that are just that feel so normal to people, but are so wrong.
Right.
And because like the hustle culture is just like, oh my God, like you gotta be doing, look at me, I'm doing things, I'm working all night. I got a side hustle and I'm working
Right.
all night. And or, and because I feel like I was sort of there in like 2020 when I started, like I had my corporate job and I started Glow Up Girl. And I was like working around the clock. Like I was working one job and and I was home at that time. So it was easy. I just went from one computer and then I turned to the other desk and then I started doing that like right after work without breaks. And it was like probably 9 months in and I was like, nope, I can't do this thing. I just can't because
Yeah.
I'm burnt out. And so then I had to give myself like there's certain days that I work on Glow Up Girl after work. And it's like today's a Wednesday. I record on Wednesdays after work. And then I will do things like a little bit Tuesday after work, and then on Saturdays. But then that's like it. I mean, I'm like, because between having a full-time job and then this, it's like you have to set boundaries.
Yeah. Boundaries for with yourself and with others, right?
Yes, yes. And I
Yeah.
think, yeah, but like you said, it just the things that we do, they just feel so normal to us. And or sometimes people just feel like it's okay, like I'll always feel this way.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not we don't have to, right?
Yes.
We
Yeah.
don't have to. Just as kind of like a little bit of a digression, but it kind of goes along with it. I found out that I had celiac disease when I was 24, 20, 25. And before that, I felt bad all the time, but that was normal for me. So I didn't know what good
Mhm.
felt like, right?
Mhm.
And then when I found out that I had celiac disease and I took gluten out, my doctor said in about 3 weeks, we did some initial testing, and then he said, let's do before we do any invasive testing, let's do an elimination diet. He said in about 3 weeks
Mhm.
after you take out the gluten, you're gonna feel amazing, but you're gonna have to bring it back in, right?
Oh.
He was like, "You're gonna feel so good, you're not gonna wanna bring it back in, but you're gonna have to." And he was exactly right. When I got to the 3 weeks, I was like, "Whoa, is this what drugs feels like?" Because, like, I feel so good, you know? And it was a struggle for me to bring it back in, and I had to, and I felt
Mhm.
awful again, but it also gave me perspective of like, no, you want to feel good.
Right.
And so I haven't wanted to touch gluten since then. But it's similar to me, there's so many similarities with burnout. It's like we don't know that we're actually there, and we don't know that we actually feel
Mhm.
bad because we're so in it, you know,
Mhm. Mhm.
until we get a little taste out of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Just feels like that's how you're supposed to feel. Oh, I'm supposed to
Yep.
feel that way all the time.
Yeah.
So when the women come into the retreats and you begin to, sort of work through some of these issues, what does it feel like? So, because what I'm hearing from you, you had a powerful breakthrough when you went to Hawaii and
Yeah.
you had that feeling. Now, have you seen that with clients who come for the retreats?
Oh, I do. I do. Well, at the first big retreat, because we did a small retreat and we did the first big retreat. And at the first big retreat, a woman who actually runs and she owns and runs two retreat centers in Bali and has been running them weekly retreats actually over the last 2 decades. So quite a while. She came in and she just burnt out, right?
Mhm.
Her you could just see everything on her face. And she walked into the house and she saw, the massive ocean views from the home that we stay in, and she sunk in. You could see her body just go, and Bali is an amazing place, right? But because
Mhm.
she was working there, she got into that burnout. And she didn't want to quite it's a hard thing to admit that we've burnt ourselves out, right? So that's one thing I come across quite a bit is, people are like, "I'm not burnt out." Like, "Okay, you may not be, right? But
Mhm.
maybe just try this on for size." And she was like, "I'm just here because I want to improve my surfing." And I was like, "Great, great. I love that you're here because you wanna improve your surfing." And then at some point, I mean, maybe it was like day 2 or something, she said, "You know, I am burnt out, but I just don't think there's anything that can get me out of that." I was like, "Okay, you know, there may not be." And like, some things work for some people and don't work for other people. And I don't want to say that everything that we offer at the retreats and the things that worked for me are going to work for everyone, right?
Right.
But I love, I love when they do, and that's what I've seen. Anyway, I ended up bringing her back to the airport at the end of the retreat, and probably 5 minutes into the conversation, she started laughing and then she started crying, and she just said, "Thank you so much. I did not know that I would begin to feel any kind of recovery from burnout." And on top of feeling like I'm beginning to recover, I feel like I have a whole toolbox, of
Mm,
tools that I can take
mhm,
home with me. And one of the things that we do with Laia, I'm huge on integration. I started actually teaching yoga when I was right after I had my first son, so
mhm.
24, 25, same time I found out celiac disease. I started teaching yoga, and s- and so I've been in that world for quite some time. I totally forgot where I was going with this because I heard the garbage trucks outside. But anyway, I don't know where I was going with that. Bring me back.
Oh, all good. So you were talking about some of the ways, some of the techniques, things that you try. And you mentioned doing yoga. Is that something that the people at the retreats work? Is yoga one of the offerings?
That is one of the offerings. Yin yoga is one of the offerings. And we also offer a couple of, depends on which teachers are at the retreat, but
Mhm,
different styles of yoga. And part of that, we worked with a teacher whose practice was about longevity. The practice that I teach in yoga is about really grounding in and
mm,
sinking and going into a meditative practice. So yoga is a huge part of it. A lot of what we do. So one of the big things that I work on with the participants is dating yourself.
oh,
Uh,
okay. Yeah.
I think I told you at the beginning of this call that my mom said something
Mhm,
about me like, "Stacey, you need to go have some fun." And I didn't
mhm.
know what that meant. I literally
Yeah.
did not know how to have fun. So I started taking myself out on dates
Mhm,
and to discover, like, what is it that I truly like and enjoy and love in this world.
mhm.
And that was the number one thing that helped me to bring back sustainable joy in my life.
I love that.
Yeah, and it helped me to get to Hawaii too. Like, I love and I'm totally lit up whenever I'm in the ocean, whenever I'm
Mm,
surfing, whenever I'm swimming, with whales. It just does something to my heart and my soul. I come out of the water just exploding with love. And I can't really do that in South Louisiana,
right.
you know?
You can swim with the gators.
Exactly, and that was not my speed.
Yeah.
So, moving to Hawaii for me now, I can just walk out of my house, walk down to the beach, and walk
Mhm.
into the ocean. I don't need anyone to take me out on their boat. I can just do it, and it fills me. And so that is, we offer a bunch of different activities at the retreats, like
Mhm.
dancing, a lot of ocean play, because that's what worked for me, um,
Yeah.
and art, just different things. So women
Yeah.
can begin to explore what
Mhm.
lights them up.
Yeah, I love that because, like you said, as you talked about earlier, just like finding a way to bring back those like moments or pockets of joy. And all these activities that you offer help someone to really, it's almost like they're coming there and you're allowing for them to date themselves at the retreat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and they're getting to know themselves and figure out what works for them. They get to come back home and still do that and still carry that on. And I think it is really important to sort of set aside that time, for yourself weekly to do that thing that you enjoy. That's important to you without, because I think so many times we feel like we have to have other people there in order for it to be something meaningful or something that matters. And like all of my hobbies are like hobbies I do like, well, like I think we talked about the puzzling.
Yeah.
Puzzling. I also like to build like miniature. I like to build book nooks. and almost like little doll houses now.
I
Who
love
knew?
that.
I would have never known, but like I just started, like just picked it up because I'm like, well, I love books. And then I wanted to, enhance my bookshelves. And so then I started putting these things together. And it's so funny because, like, nope, my husband doesn't enjoy it. He doesn't enjoy puzzles. He doesn't enjoy those little houses or whatever. But it's my thing.
Yep.
And I was like, I don't, yeah, like, cool, go in there, sit down. I'll be in there in a minute, like, let me have some time. But it's just, I put my headphones on and I just zone into it. And
Yeah.
that's what people need. And I think it's important too, like when you can find those things, because a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to be going out. I don't want to have to go out by myself. But if you just
No.
find those things that you can bring into your home, which it sounds like you introduce a lot of those opportunities for women. So I love that.
Yeah, yeah, and okay, so thank you. You reminded me of where I was going before the garbage truck passed by. One of the things that we do is integration. I've been to a bunch of different yoga retreats through my yoga practice, and I get home from the yoga retreat, and it was almost like, oh, now how do I like keep
Mhm.
practicing these things? And then I
Right.
forget them, and I wouldn't really incorporate them. So the big thing that we do is integration, and we have an online community after the retreats
Mhm.
for the women to stay in touch and let us know, like, n- you know this one particular woman, she keeps posting, she keeps letting us know all the dates she's taking herself on, and how much fun she's having. And she
Oh.
sends pictures, and she's just like, her cheeks are glowing, and just a totally different, I mean, just massive transformation there.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, yeah,
So
so thank
so
you for bringing me back there.
yes, of course, a real life testimonial just happening. Um, Now I know we've talked about some of the things that you enjoy, but how do you maintain that balance? Because you're helping people who are struggling to find that joy again. How do you stay like balanced through the work that you do?
So one of the beautiful things that comes out of dating yourself is falling in love with yourself. And that's what I needed. I needed to fall in love with myself so I would stop abandoning myself and then abandoning my needs and abandoning my desires. Now it's really hard to turn back. It's like, no, no, no. It's my time. So I'll
Right.
get back to you in a moment. It's so fuel it gives me so much fuel to go play in the ocean.
Mhm.
A much better person when I have that. I'm a much better person to everyone whenever I have that. I do find it, to be completely candid here, I do find it difficult when I'm actually hosting retreats on a daily basis. So our retreats are 10 days long. So it's really, I'm learning with each one how to incorporate that into my life, because I want to be there and be present for everyone. And
Mhm.
it's always like the universe giving us
Right. Yeah.
opportunities to practice these things that we feel pretty solid on, but yet, so I feel the people pleasing coming up when I'm hosting the retreats. I want to make sure everyone's happy. And then it's like, oh, wait a second. I need to go make myself happy so I can come back and, like, you guys,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna be here and you'll be happy.
Yeah. Yeah, for
Right.
sure. Yeah.
So that has been a bit of a challenge, but I am working through it, and sometimes that's like actually playing in the ocean with the women who are on retreat. Sometimes that looks like taking time for myself, an hour or 2 hour to do a yin yoga practice to really ground in. Different things that, different ways where I can kind of sneak in and do the things without also feeling like, oh, if I don't, I could be dropping the ball here. I'm getting better at going, "Oh, what? It was so what if I drop the ball?" Right?
Mhm. Mhm.
It's okay. Everybody's gonna be okay.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. I love
Yeah.
that because yeah, it's just as much is important for you to fill your cup so that you can continue to pour out to others.
Yeah, I mean, that's, like, the number one takeaway with the retreats. It's like, our cups, just like you said, our cups have to be full before we can really show up and be present for others. Otherwise, resentment comes into play. All kinds
Mhm.
of messiness comes in whenever we don't take
Mhm.
care of ourselves.
Exactly. All right. Why don't you tell us about the retreats for anyone who's listening and saying, I want to know more, and how people can connect to you and find out more?
So the retreats are all based, thank you. The retreats are all based in Hawaii, and like I said, we have all kinds of different workshops. Dating yourself is one of them, reframing the brain, like talk about transformations. I participated in one of the workshops that I wasn't leading, and I was encouraged to reframe my brain around dating and kind of my idea then at the time. I was, 14 years post divorce, and it was a hard one. And so I had this kind of negative outlook just on men in general. And this workshop was so transformational for me. I totally reframed how I look. I mean, men are amazing. They are absolutely amazing. I don't know why I gave them such a bad rap. I mean, I do know why, but like, yeah. And and it was just starting to like see how great they are. And there's so many just solid men out there. And then I was able to like shift and write about exactly what I wanted to find in a man. And then I met the most amazing man and have the most amazing partnership now. So there's another transformation. So there's different workshops like that can
Mhm.
open up different opportunities in different ways. And and then we have all kinds of fun. It's like summer camp, right? I don't Did you ever go to summer camp?
Many, many years ago.
Yeah. So like, summer camp, there's a bunch of different activities you
Mhm,
can choose from.
mhm.
It's just like that. Like you can choose from learning to surf, you can choose from doing art. We have different dance instructors like salsa, merengue, hula. Hula is a huge hit. Everyone loves
Mm.
hula. And there's luau's and ocean play, all kinds of different ocean plays,
Oh,
sailing. So, and then the other thing is people are like, why are they 10 days? I can't get off of 10 days. But we do that intentionally because when people get in there, one, it's a long way to travel to Hawaii. Like if you were coming from Atlanta, by the time you got there, you'd just be like, oh, I need
mhm.
vacation from that travel.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we want people to be able to relate, like get in, sink in. And then we just found that like by day 5, people are really starting to sink in
Mhm,
and wanting to like they're starting to like have fun. And if it
mhm.
ended 2 days later, it would just be heartbreaking.
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah, so they're 10 days and they're in these beautiful settings, oceanfront because the ocean is so healing for our nervous system. All the little details that we put into the retreats are really to calm the nervous system and to create a space for people to come, reset, rest, and then start to enjoy life again. Um, you,
Awesome.
yeah, they can get in touch with me. You can find us on our website at www.laia, Laia retreats, retreats plural.com or on Instagram at Laia underscore retreats.
Awesome. And we'll make sure we drop those links in the show notes as well. All right. So now we're going to transition three things with Stacey. I'm going to ask you three questions that just helps our audience get to know you a little bit better. So the first one is a two-parter. How do you start and end the day?
So I start with the yin yoga practice. That really helps me ground in. So I start with the yin yoga practice and a meditation, and sometimes meditation is 5 minutes, sometimes it's 10 minutes, sometimes it's focused on my breath, sometimes it's a led meditation on insight timer, and then I have some breakfast and start working on whatever needs to do for Laia. And then how I end my day is I get in the water. So in the afternoon, I make sure I
Mhm,
get in the ocean, and then I come home and my partner and I cook dinner. We catch up and spend time together, and then go to sleep.
mhm. Awesome. What's a goal or intention you set for yourself this year?
Sailing. So I love sailing, but
Hmm.
I've always been a passenger on a boat, not really had the tools or the skill set to sail a boat. So my partner and I want to sail around the world. It's been a dream of mine since I was a kid. And so my goals this year are to really learn how to sail so that we can eventually begin our journey
Awesome.
around
Love
the
that.
world. Yeah.
And the last question, where are you currently finding inspiration?
So I would say, I mentioned earlier that I went through pretty tumultuous custody battle and have a not your typical mother custody arrangement. My son lives in South Louisiana still, and I live in Hawaii, and I see him on holidays, and he's with me in the summer. And that was really, really difficult. But while it was difficult, it's provided such an area of growth for my entire family. Anders, my son, provides me so much inspiration. He has grown so much and he'll tell me, Mom, like he loves what I'm doing. He loves that I feel so free. And he loves that like every I approach everything with love, and I don't think I would be able to do that if I hadn't given this life to myself. I was pretty unhappy when I was in New Orleans, and I hated that he saw me unhappy. So, continuing to do this and to do this, I'm totally inspired by my son, or
Mhm.
both of my boys,
Yeah.
and them seeing their mother happy and
Mhm.
joy, right, and living a
Yeah.
life that's completely true to me.
Yeah. I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, before I let you go, I do have one more question that I'm going to ask you. It is, what are three things you'd like the audience to take away from our conversation today?
I think there are things that we can do to prevent burnout, eating right, taking care of ourselves, getting proper exercise, saying no um, to things that aren't true to us, saying yes to the things that are true to us, not feeling like we have to be perfectionists, and you know, starting to drop that overachieving mask, knowing that we are doing enough, right? I think that's a big one. If you feel like you are in the space of burnout and you don't feel like you can leave just quite yet, I would totally recommend dating yourself. Take yourself out on a date. Commit to at least an hour a week and take yourself to do something fun.
Mhm.
And like you said, you don't actually have to take yourself out. You can get a puzzle if that's what brings you joy, or try it out. Like that's one thing I tell the retreat participants is try it on. If it doesn't fit, head it back. Try
Mhm.
something else on, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And commit to yourself. Take yourself out on a different date each week, and start to
Mhm.
begin to find what brings you joy in your life. Because if you get a glimpse of that joy, you'll want to keep getting more.
Yes.
Um, and then if you've tried all these things, or, if you've tried these things, if you're having a hard time, picking up a routine, keeping a routine, creating time for yourself, if you have a hard time taking yourself on dates, then maybe it's time for a reset, right? Maybe it's time for a retreat. And of course, I want to say everyone come to Laia Retreats because we can, it works, but there are a number of ways that you can reset yourself. And I would recommend taking yourself out of the situation and giving your body a full reset.
Awesome. Love
Yeah,
those. All
yeah.
very good. Well, Stacy, it has been a joy to chat with you and just to sort of hear about your journey and how you transform that into an amazing way that you're helping other women.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure, Kyra, and I hope I get to see you in Hawaii.
I know, I know. I gotta start. Look, I gotta start planning to get there before you go around the world.
Right? Right? Yeah, so I'll keep you posted on the next retreats, and then I think there are actually some women who are coming from Atlanta.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
interesting.
So,
Awesome.
um, yeah, and I can't wait to chat more with you.
Yes, same here. Well, thank you again so much. Everyone, stay tuned. I'll be right back.